Hello coders! We have another Scratch game to build together. This one is going to be kind of like a tanks game, but you're going to be controlling a knight instead of a tank and firing crossbows. So let's take a look at what it plays like. Hit the green flag. There's some instructions. This is a two-player game. One person uses the arrow keys and the M on the keyboard to play, and the other person uses the WASD keys to move and Q to attack. And the game waits for one of the players to click, and then it starts. So I can control the left hand, or the blue player, with the arrow keys, and then shoot a crossbow with them. Okay. If it hits the shield, it stops. If it hits the person, it kind of sends them into the corner, and they're froze for 3 seconds. I can control this person with the WASD keys and shoot with Q. Okay. And the idea is to grab the flag of the opposite color of you, so now I'm red, okay, and bring it back to mine. Now if I get shot along the way, okay, I drop the flag and it goes back to where it started from. And the first person to grab a flag and successfully, I didn't mean to shoot myself, and to successfully get back to their base 3 times wins. And so every time you get a flag all the way to your corner, okay, so you see that up here, blue now has 1 point. When you get to 3 points, you win. Some little details of the game. If you move backwards, you're a little bit slower than if you move forwards. And once you have the flag, it slows you down. So it gives the other person a better chance to shoot you. You can see that now they're both going slower, and there's a difference between the speed in forward and back. So this is the game that we're going to be recreating. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to set this off to the side, and let's open up Scratch. Log into your account and then hit create to start a new project. The first thing we're going to do, like last time, is delete the cat sprite because we don't really need them. For the background, I painted it, and so we're going to bring the mouse all the way to the bottom right to this picture of a mountain land. It looks like it's a picture of a mountain. And when I let the mouse hover over that, we have the menu, and I want to do the paintbrush. And what I did was chose the rectangle tool, and then drew a box. I covered the whole thing. Okay. And if for some reason see the lines or something, you can always draw the box smaller if you're having a hard time clicking the corner, and then drag it and make it bigger this way. Drag that out, and now we don't see that black line. All right, and for the fill, I use the paint bucket. If you use the paint bucket, okay, if you click on the paint bucket tool and then click on fill, you have these gradient options. And I use this one on the far right that looks like a circle, and that lets you pick 2 colors. So you click on one color, and I think that I did like 2 shades of green. So I did a dark green for the outside, and a lighter green for the inside. And then I move the mouse over here, and you can see that I can choose where the gradient starts. And I can do it in the center here. And then as soon as I click off of it, you see what that looks like. I think I actually did that the other way around, so let's swap these colors. The dark was on the outside. And now I click, and then pick any of the other tools, and I can see what that's going to look like. And that's perfectly fine. So I don't need this first backdrop anymore. All right, and the backdrop in and of itself does not have any code to it. So we're going to go back to code, and we're going to create our first sprite. Let's make one of our knights. So now I'm going to hover the mouse over the little picture of a cat face, and and pick the paintbrush here. I want to make sure my knight is facing to the right. And I'm going to start off, we're drawing from the top down, or we're going to be looking at the knight from the top down. And so you want to think about what's the furthest thing away from you. When you're looking at someone from above their heads, it's their feet, and that's what you want to draw first. So I'm going to pick the circle tool, and I'm going to give him some black shoes. So I pick black, and I'm just going to draw two little ellipses kind of centered over this center mark. Let me zoom in on that. So here's this. This is the center of our character, and his feet are going to be standing on either side of it. And so I'm just going to make two little. Well, I'm going to make one, and then so that I have two that are the same, I'm going to switch back to this tool, the select tool, and I'm going to click on this and then do copy and paste. And then I end up with an exact copy. And line it up together. Okay. And that's going to be my feet. And then let's set up some arms. I'm going to do the rectangle tool. I'm going to use a grayish color. I want to up the brightness a little bit, but take down the saturation. And that'll give me a nice gray color. And for this arm, it's going to be the shield, so I want two of these. I don't want that outline. So I'm going to click on outline and click on this red line. That'll turn that line off. Alright. Alright, remember there's an undo button right here if you make any mistakes. So I want to draw another gray box like this. And this is going to be the arm that's holding the shield. On this side, I'm going to draw a gray arm. That's kind of just straight ahead. Like this. Okay. And now I'm going to switch to the circle tool, and I'm going to do the color of my knight. This will be the red knight. So I'm going to pick a very red color. And I'm going to draw out a nice size circle. And then use the select tool to move it around. I want to make sure that I can see the feet. And once I do that, then we see that the arms are kind of way off. So let's move this arm back here. Okay. And to select two things, what you can do is you can click out anywhere in this checkered box and drag, and you'll draw a box. And whenever this box touches, you'll select it. So I can grab both of these and move it back. I want, yeah, that's fine. Alright, so this is the start of our knight. Let's add a little part here to make it look like he's wearing a helmet. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to pick the paintbrush tool, and we're going to pick any other color, really. I'm going to do with purplish. And I'm going to draw kind of like a feathery shape coming off of the top of his head, so it looks like the top of a helmet. Alright, now let's give put some things in his hands. He needs a shield. I'm going to pick a orangish color for that. And pick the circle tool again and draw out a nice long oval. I want it to cover up just half of his body at the most, but a little bit less than half. And I want the shield to be out away from his body a little ways, because ultimately the arrows are going to be poking partway through it. So that really out here is probably better away from his foot, and then I can drag this out and make his arm a little bit bigger. And then we'll make this arm a little bit bigger just to match better. So now he's holding a shield. Let's draw him a crossbow. I'm going to pick a brownish color. Now it's going to be here, kind of in the oranges. Make it dark. Alright, and I'm clicked on this arm, so I'm changing the color of the arm. I didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to press undo. And then make sure I click outside of any of the shapes. Now I can pick a color without changing anything. And a brownish color. That's fine right there. And we do have to be somewhat careful about the colors. We don't want, we want only one part of his body to be red. Because we're going to be using the scratch feature where you can detect different colors. And so his body is important and the color of the shield is important. And then we don't want anything else in the whole game to be either one of these colors. But any sort of brown will do for the crossbow. We're going to pick the rectangle tool. We're going to draw a rectangle going from his hand and a long skinny one that goes across like this, kind of a T shape. Okay. I'm going to pick the line tool and we're going to do this in black is fine. We're going to draw a line from here to here. That was not really thick enough, so I'm going to select it with the select tool and then up the stroke. 4 seems to be fine. So let's do the line tool again and draw from here to here. And that roughly looks like crossbow. So here's the start of our red knight. Whenever you're happy with it, we'll set up the animation for his walking, but don't do that until you're happy with it. So go ahead and pause the video and fine tune it if you want to make any changes. So I'm going to carry on. I want to right click on the costume here and hit duplicate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of his feet. So I need to be on the select tool and click on a foot. And I'm going to use the arrow keys to move it back a little way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots back. And then this foot, I'm going to bring forward 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I'm going to duplicate the first one again and then reorder it so that I have him with his feet kind of even, and then 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, even again. Let's duplicate this one and do the opposite. So I did the upper foot back. Now I'm going to do the upper foot forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm pressing on the arrow keys to move it forward, and then the bottom foot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back. And so if I cycle through this, you can see the animation happening. His feet are parallel and even. Now 1 foot's forward, 1 foot's back, and then they're even, and then the other foot's forward. And if you imagine cycling through that, you can see it looks like he's walking. So that's going to be our animation when he's moving. And let's switch over to code. So I click on the code tab. And let's start with just being able to turn. All right. We're going to do a when green flag clicked, which is an events. Events, when green flag clicked. I'm going to, in control, forever, check to see if, so the if block, stick it inside of the forever. And I'm going to be checking to see if, since this is the red knight, and he's facing this way, we're going to be using the WASD keys. So we're looking for, in sensing, there is a key space pressed. I want to drag that into here. Okay. Forever key space pressed, but I don't want it to be space. I want it to be A at first, and then we'll do D. So if key A is pressed, that is what's going to be turning counterclockwise. So I'm going to go into motion and find turn, and then I'm looking for this counterclockwise symbol. So this one here. Okay, and drag that into here. Turn 15 degrees is going to be too much, so I'm going to change back down to -5, because we're counterclockwise, we want to be turning negative direction. Alright, and so now if I hit the green flag and I hold down the A key, nope, that's backwards. Why is that backwards? Turn positive 5 degrees. Okay. Sorry. Alright, so A is positive 5 degrees. And then, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's the direction that the arrow is going. Alright, and now we want to do this again for the D key so we can spin the other way. So we're going to grab another if block from control. If, a sensing block, key space pressed. But I want to switch it to D, A, B, C, D. Back in motion, we want to turn clockwise, -5 degrees. No, we don't. Why am I doing, okay. I'm thinking of a completely different program where you can only turn one direction. Alright, so I want to turn 5 degrees this way. If we would have dragged the same block and given a negative number, that would have worked too. But that's completely unnecessary. So this is the correct setup over here. And we should be able to just spin around either direction. Okay, and you want to make sure that the spinning looks more like he's spinning in place rather than spinning around something. It does kind of look like he's rotating around a little bit, so let's go back into costumes. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to click, I'm on the select tool. I'm going to click and drag over everything, and my character is not really well centered. So I want to bring him all the way forward. And now the spinning is a little bit better, because it's spinning around a central point, rather than the center point being off. But that just threw off all my costumes, because now you'll see when I change costume, I'm spinning back. So this is why we should make sure that our costume is perfect before we duplicate it, but that's okay, we can really quickly delete these and redo it. So if I right click and just keep duplicating this, so I have 4 costumes, the second one is 1 foot back, 1 foot forward, and then the last one, do the other direction. And that's perfectly fine. All right, back to code. And ultimately, when you make games, this is what you do. You go back and forth between your artwork and your coding to get all the little details looking good. All right, so now we can spin around in a circle, either direction. Let's get some forward movement and backwards movement going to accomplish that. I want to start a whole new string. I don't want to add forward and backward movement into here because then it couldn't handle it together at the same time. This is checking to see, are you pressing the A key, and now are you checking the D key? If I try to press both of those at the same time, like nothing happens. So if I add more stuff to this, it's checking one thing at a time. But if I start a whole new event when green flag clicked, then this means that I can handle forward and backwards movement on one string and at the same time handle spinning movement with another string, and they can be occurring at the same time that way. So that's why I'm splitting this up into a whole separate event. Now we need to do something similar here. We're going to do another forever if. Forever if. I need the key again, so in sensing, we're going to do key space pressed, but this is going to be W. So I scroll all the way down until I find W here. And for a moment, let's just make sure we can get things working. So I'll do move 10 steps. And now, if I press the green flag, if I press W, I move 10 steps. I'm not running through my animations, and that's a bit fast, but for now I just want to make sure that things are working. And let's do the same thing with backwards movement. Control, well, all I can do is I can right click on this if block, and I can duplicate it, and now I have an exact copy of it. And then I can attach it still inside the if block for forever block, but below the if block. I don't want to be inside of the if block like this. This would cause a problem. This would be saying if I'm pressing both the keys, then you can move like this, and that's not what I want. So forever if that, and then the if ends and we start a new if key, will change to D. Okay, and then I want to move negative 10 steps. So I'm moving backwards, and if I hit the green flag, now I should be able to move forwards and backwards. Oh, why did I do D? Sorry. It's not D, it's S. Alright. Alright, so now W is forward, S is back, A is spin that way, D is spin that way. Now I can move around. So that's a start. I want, at the beginning of the game, for him to go to this spot right here and face this direction. So to make that happen, let's go to motion, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on him, and I'm going to drag him to roughly where I want him to be, which is right about the middle of the screen and kind of with the top of his hat just barely touching or close to touching the edge of the screen. So I'm going to stick him where I want him, and then as I do that, you'll notice in the motion blocks, there's a go to block right here, and it actually changes numbers every time you move them. So if I stick him where I want him to be, and then I drag this block over, it's already set up correctly at -175, 0. So now every time I hit the green flag, so if I move someplace else, when I hit the green flag, he'll go back to that spot. I also want him to point this direction, so there's a point and direction block in here. And if I click on this, 90 degrees happens to be the direction I want him to point. You can see that the arrow's pointing that direction. 90 degrees is fine, so let's hit the green flag. Now he's pointed that way. I also want him to always switch to his first costume whenever I start a game. So let's go into looks, and let's go to switch to costume, and this goes before the forever. Costume 1. Alright, so let's, again, do a check here. And right now we're not switching costumes in any way, so that won't even matter yet. But just to bug test, let's move around a little bit and then hit the green flag. He goes back where I want him, facing the correct way. So let's create our walking animation. And the way that we're going to do that is we're actually going to set up our own block, which is not something that we did in the last video. So this last section right here, it's pink and it says My Blocks. You click on that, and then you have an option to make a block. I'm going to click on Make a Block, and under block name, I'm going to write walk. Okay, and I'm going to click on Add an Input Number or Text. I'm going to click on this right here. And then the number or the text, I'm going to write speed. Okay, So this is the block that I'm making. It's called walk, and it will take a number or text every time we call on it, and we're calling that variable that's built into it speed. So I press OK, and now I have a new block that's already in my project here. So let's move this over. So I have define walk speed. What I want to do is in looks, I want to always switch to the first costume. Oh, sorry, first costume. Okay. And then I want to go to control and grab a repeat block. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat 3 times procedure. We're going to go into motion and we're going to move 10 steps. We're going to, in looks, switch to the next costume. And then we're going to control, wait. And we're not going to do much wait time at all, because we want this to be a pretty speedy animation. So let's see what point 1 looks like. Alright, and now to test this out, what I have to do is I have to come back to this string where we're moving forwards and backwards, and instead of when W key pressed, move 10 steps, I'm going to get rid of, click on it and drag it away and bring it over here and let go. I want to go to my blocks and I'm going to grab walk. Okay. And then what I get to do here is I get to pick a speed. So I'm just going to do 10 for now. And let's also do that for S. So I'm going to drag this away and walk. And now I need to do -10. It's going to be backwards. And I'm going to look back at my block here, walk speed. And what I can do is, instead of move 10 steps here, I can click on the speed and I can drag it down and I can stick it in here. So now what I'm saying is, when you get to this line of code, move speed steps, and speed is whatever I stuck over here. And this is going to let us give it different numbers depending on different situations. Right now, we're just doing 10 either way. Actually, let's say if you want to walk backwards, it's not -10, it's -8. Okay. So now I'm saying when I press W, I want you to walk, and here's the number 10, use that. So over here, it says, okay, walk means switch costume, and then do this 3 times. Move whatever that number was, in this case it was 10, steps, and then switch this. If we press S key, we say, hey, call on walk, but feed it the number -8. And so now when it's running it, it's running -8 steps. So let's hit the green flag and let's give this a test. If I press W, we're doing our walk animation. Okay. And if I press S, we're walking backwards a little bit slower. It's difficult to see that. -8 is ultimately where we want it because we don't want a huge difference, but just to demonstrate, let's go down to a -2, just so we can see the difference. Here's 10 forward and -2 backwards. So that's the power of making your own block, is being able to give it different numbers or inputs, and it will adjust accordingly. Alright, so we got our character and he can walk around now. Let's make it so that he can shoot. I'm going to hit the green flag so that he goes back to where we started. And let's paint a new sprite. So I click on the cat face and pick the paintbrush. And I'm going to just do a line. I want it to be fairly. And I'm going to give it since this is the Red Knight and he has like a golden color shield, I want to stay somewhat close to that, but not too close. Let's do a yellowish color. So bring the brightness up, find a yellow. It can't be too close to that gold. I think that's fine. And I want the front of it, for now, to be going right up to this. I don't want to move this. Alright, use that. Make the center point at the very front of it. And this is going to be way too big, but that's okay for now. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to make it actually a little bit thicker. Let's try like 12. Alright, now I'm going to pick the box tool. And I'm going to draw a little box here towards the end. I'm going to click on outline, and I don't want any outline, so I'm going to use this red line here. I'm going to click on fill, and I'm going to make it white, so just bring the saturation all the way down and the brightness all the way up, and that will make white. Now it's kind of hard to see it, but it's right here. I'm going to use the select tool to click on it, and I want to spin it. So underneath it, there's a little double-sided arrow, and if I click on that, I can spin it, and I'm going to move it over top of the arrow. And then up here, in this section, there's forward and backwards, and this is how things are layered. I want this to go backwards, so I'm going to click on backward once, and now you can see that the arrow is over, the line is over top of it. And let's keep moving it. Let's be something like that. And I'm also looking here in the game preview to give me a good sense of what it's going to look like. I think that will be fine. All right, and now I just want to shrink it down. So here, I'm still clicked on the sprite, and let's go ahead and rename it. This is sprite 2, let's name it Red Knight Arrow. And when I'm naming things, I tend to not do any spaces. I just do a capital letter every time I'm starting a new word. That's a habit from other coding languages. So I do Red Knight Arrow, one word, but capitalize the K in Knight and the A in Arrow, but you can name it whatever you want. So this is Red Knight's Arrow. I should also name Red Knight. So I'm going to click back on sprite 1 and name him Red Knight. Alright, now let's click back on the Red Knight arrow and go into the code. And let's set him up with an event. When green flag is clicked, I want him to control forever. I'm going to go ahead and grab an if because I know I'm going to need it, but I'm not going to stick it in there yet because there's going to be other things first. So I'm going to go into motion, and I'm going to say go to, it says go to random position. I'm going to drag that in. But I'm going to change random position by clicking this to Red Knight. So now forever go to Red Knight. Alright, and if I click on the green flag, you'll see that it goes to the Red Knight, and if I move around, it sticks with it. Now there's two problems here. One is that I don't want the arrow to be in the center of the Golden Knight. I want it to be over here. And the other problem is that the arrow is not pointing in the same direction as the knight. So also the arrow is a little bit too big. So let's tackle one at a time here. Let's make the size. We want to do the size first. So while I'm clicked on the Red Knight arrow here in the sprite section, there's a size right here. And let's cut that in half. That's fine. It doesn't need to be a big arrow at all. It's a bolt from a crossbow. So we want it to be kind of small. And we also, it's going to puncture partway through the shields. So we don't want it to be so long that it'll go through the shield and hit the player. So this is a good size right here. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to click on the costume, again for this arrow, and I'm going to, with the select tool, click and drag a box around it. So I'm selecting both of these, the line and that white box shape. And I just want to start moving it until it's better aligned with where I want it to be. And I'm not, for right now, I'm not worried about direction. Just where is this kind of the start of the hands. Okay, and if I hit the green flag, oh, and let's change that again. It's right about there. All right, so let's move around. Now as I spin, it's not spinning with me. So let's fix that next. And hit the green flag again to set it back. What I want the arrow to do is I want it to point in the same direction that the knight is pointed in. To do that, I kind of have to keep track of where the knight is pointed in a variable that we can access here. So I'm going to click on the red knight. And I'm going to click on variables. And I'm going to make a variable. And I'm going to call this red knight direction. Okay. And name it something to that effect. And naming becomes really important the more complex our projects get, because you have to know what variable goes to what. This is specifically for the red knight, and it's keeping track of his direction. And I want to make sure that for all sprites is checked, and I'm going to click on OK. Now, the red knight direction shows up here, and ultimately I don't want that, but for now we'll leave it. And what I want to do is, in this string that's keeping track of, that's moving us, clockwise and counterclockwise, let's go ahead and keep track of the direction here. What I want to do is forever change, or no, we'll do set. Forever set my variable, but it's not my variable, it's red knight direction, to, and then in the motion section, if I scroll down a little ways, there's actually a variable in here called direction. This is all automatically keeping track of red knight's direction. What we're doing now, though, is we're saying, hey, whatever direction you're in, also change this variable red knight direction to match. And so now if I hit the green flag and I start changing directions, we can see this variable called red knight direction also changes. And what's nice about that is I can head over to the red knight arrow, and I can tell it in motion to point in direction, forever point in direction, and then I can go into variable section and grab the variable red knight direction. So let's hit the green flag to restart that, and now it will follow along. And there's a little bit of a delay, but that's okay. We're ultimately not going to see the arrow most of the time. Okay. And I don't need to see this up here anymore. So in the variables section, there's a little checkbox next to the variables, and that means show it up on the screen. So if I uncheck that, it'll go away. All right. So now let's take this if and stick it in underneath. And what I want to do is I want to check and see if a key is pressed on the keyboard. So that's in motion. Or no, sorry, it's not. It's in sensing. If key space is pressed, but I'm not using space. I'm using the letter Q because it happens to be right next to the WASD keys. So if key Q is pressed, okay, so if key Q is pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to create a clone. So that was in events, no, control, sorry. Control towards the bottom of it, create clone of myself. And then we're going to add a wait block. So that's also in control, and we're going to stick it right underneath the create clone myself. And whatever number you put here is how quickly we're allowing the player to fire. So if I hold down the Q key, how often are we going to create a clone? I'm saying I'm just going to leave it at 1 second. So that's as fast as you can fire one bolt, one round a second. But you can adjust this number however you see fit. All right. So before we create a clone section, let's go into looks. And towards the bottom of looks, there is a hide. And let's go ahead and hide this. Okay, now when I hit on the green flag, it's still technically there, it's just not visible. All right, and while I'm here, I know that I'm going to need a show, so let's grab a show and drag it out here next to it. Let's start a new section. So in events, in control, and towards the bottom of control, when I start as clone, we're going to show. And then we want it to move. So I'm going to do, and I want it to move in pieces, not all at once. If I just tell it to move like 100 steps, it'll not detect if it's touching anything along the way. So let's grab a repeat block actually. Control repeat. And then we'll go into motion and grab a move block. And I'm going to change the repeat to 20 and the move to 20. So it's going to move 20 steps 20 times. And when it's done with that, well, let's just do that for now. Let's just see if that works. So I hit the green flag and I can move around, and if I press Q, I shoot a arrow. And I can shoot it once every second. And here's where you can play around with the number. If I change this to like 0.1 seconds and hit the green flag, this will let me shoot very rapidly. Okay. Or I could bump it up to like 3 seconds and make it very difficult for the players to shoot each other. They'll have to be very careful with their aim. I think a second is reasonable. But it's up to you however you want the game to feel. Alright, now when we're done moving the 20 steps, we need to delete the clone. So let's go back to control, and then delete. Alright. Now let's create a flag to go pick up. So we're going to create the blue flag. Let's do that. We're going to paint a new sprite. So I come back here to the sprite section and pick paint. And we're just going to do a blue box. So I'm going to pick the rectangle tool, switch to a bluish color. Okay, draw a box. That's a wee bit big. And I want to make sure that I'm centering the box roughly with the center of this little check mark here. This check mark that's above my head. So that is roughly centered. And I'm going to pick the text tool and click in here and just write the word flag. I can't see it because it's writing the text in blue, and blue text on a blue background you're not going to be able to see. So let's select it and change the color. Let's just go with a white color. Saturation all the way down, brightness all the way up. And pick the select tool and drag the word flag into here. And if I click in the corner, I can make it a little bit bigger. All right. Now the flags code. To start off with, in code, when the green flag is clicked, I want it to go to this corner right here. So I'm going to stick it where I want it, and then go into motion, and I'm going to grab the go to XY, and it's already set up with the numbers that I want. Alright, let's also set the size to 100% because I know that I'm going to be shrinking the size later. So that's in looks. I'm going to set size to 100%. And that will be that size. Now let's grab a forever if. So control forever if. And let's go ahead and set up our logic for if the red knight has touched the flag. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable that I'm going to call blue captured. And that's going to just keep track of whether or not the red knight is holding on to the blue flag. So let's go into variables and make a new variable. This is going to be for all sprites, and it's going to be let's see. You can do like blue flag captured, or if we want to keep everything so that the colors match up, so that every time we use the word red, we're referring to the red knight. We can do like red has flag or something. So that's what I'll do. I'll do red has flag. Okay, and hit OK. And so I want to grab the set block while I'm here in variables, and we'll do this first thing. We're going to set red has flag to, and I'm going to click in here, I'm going to do the word false. Because at the start of the game, he definitely does not have the flag. So set red has flag to false. I'm going to forever if, and I'm going to grab the variable red has flag and drag it onto the screen any place. I'm going to uncheck this while I'm thinking about it because I don't need to see it here. Uncheck that. Forever if red has flag is false is what this section is going to be. So let's go into operators and then find the one that's equal to. It has a blank spot and equal to 50. Let's drag that in here. Let's do red has flag here and then equals the word false, and make sure that you spell false the same way every time you write it, and make sure that you, if you do a capital F, you have to do it all around, which is why I tend to just do lowercase letters. These have to match. So if red has flag equals false, then we're going to set the size to 100%. We're going to go to motion, we're going to do go to that XY. So go back to your corner, and then we're going to, wait a second. All right. So that's what's going to happen every time red flag is set to false, the flag's going to come back here. Now, if red is touching the flag, we need to set up another chain of logic here, and we're just going to keep using this string, but I'm going to drag it up so we can see better. So I'm going to do another if block, and this is going to go below the if that's here, not inside of it. I'm going to say if, I need an operator, I need this equals again. I also need an AND block for this chunk of logic that we're about to do. So if, let's go into sensing, if there's a touching mouse pointer here, I'm going to drag that in to the first part of the AND, but instead of mouse pointer it needs to be if touching red knight. So if touching red knight and in variables, I want to grab red has flag equals true. And what I'm going to do is take this whole thing and stick it up here in this AND. So if touching red knight and red has flag equals true, that goes here in this if. So that's what the whole thing looks like. Then we're going to go to looks. I want to go to the front layer because I want it to just be on top. I want to go to front layer. I want to cut the size in half, so I'm going to set size to 50%. I'm going to also set the ghost effect. So there's it says set color effect, but if I click here on color, I can change ghost, and that's making it see-through. Set ghost effect to we'll do I'll try 80%. Set to 80%. And then since I'm doing that here, I need to undo it when red flag is false. Red has flag is false, so I'm going to grab that set color effect to again. And we'll do it after the second. After a second, we'll set the ghost effect back to 0. Okay, so this is and this should be attached to this string. So forever, okay. So now I'm saying if red has flag and red has flag equals true, or if touching red knight and red has flag is true. And the reason I'm doing it that way, instead of just touching red knight, is once the red knight has the flag, if he gets hit, I want him to drop the flag. And if all what we were looking at is whether or not the flag is touching the red knight, then once he got hit, even if we moved him around or hit him or something, the flag would stay with him. So I want the flag to go back when he gets hit. So let's make that happen to broadcast there, or to change the variable for the red knight. So when he touches the flag, so I'm going to click on red knight, and someplace in here, let's add that. I want to go to variables and grab the red has flag, and then operators, we're going to find the true. So we're going to set this up, like this. If red has flag equals true. No, what am I thinking? No, cancel all that. Don't listen to me. I'm figuring this out as I go along. All right. What I want to do is detect if I'm touching the flag and then just change the variable. So forever, let's start a whole new string. This string is keeping track of forward and backwards movement. This string is keeping track of left and right movement. Let's go to events and do a when green flag clicked. Okay. When green flag clicked, forever, if, do sensing, do touching mouse pointer, but we're going to change that mouse pointer to sprite1 because I didn't name the flag. I'm going to click on the flag and name it. This is the blue flag. Blue flag. All right, so back to the Red Knights code. If touching blue flag, then in variables, we set my variable, but we change my variable to red has flag to true. All right, let's give this a shot. Click the green flag. I don't know why the green flag is there, but oh, we'll fix that in a second. So once I touch the green flag, that happens, but it's not going with it, and the flag's not in the right spot. So let's go back to the flag and figure out why that is. The go-to numbers aren't working correctly, or didn't go correctly. So if I move the flag into a spot, I can see here, those numbers are 184, negative 151. I'm looking right in here next to X and Y. So let's fix that. Go to 184, negative 151. Okay, and then I need to fix that in two spots. So 184, negative 151. All right, when I hit the green flag, that works correctly. When I go touch it, I'm changing the variable. Red has flag becomes true, which means that it goes to the front layer, it cuts its size in half, and it becomes very transparent. And now I need to make it go with the knight is the thing that I didn't do. So in motion, we do go to and drag it in here. Instead of random position, I'm going to do, go to red knight. Now let's hit the green flag. Once I touch it, it should stay with me. And you can see that you can just barely see it because it's so transparent. But the blue flag is there, and it will stay with me from now on. All right, and if I hit the green flag, it goes back to where it starts off at. All right, so now the other thing I want to look for is if the flag, blue flag, has been brought to the red flag's kind of base over here. So I need a whole other sprite to kind of like be here just waiting to see if the blue flag has touched it. So let's create a spot over there. So I'm going to create a new sprite. So choose sprite and paint. And this is just going to be kind of an empty box. I don't want to have any fill. No fill. We'll give it an outline. I'm just going to do a black outline. All right, and I'm just going to make a box. I want to be a little bit thicker than that. That's a bit big. I want to make sure that it's centered with this. All right, and now I want to click this and drag it way up here into this corner. Let's see what it looks like. I think that's still a little bit big. I'm going to make it smaller. Center it with that center costume again. Move it into the corner. I think that's better. So let's head over to code. And also what I want to happen is when green flag is clicked, I want you to go to this spot. Now I'm going to check, make sure negative 191, 148 matches where it is right now. And I want you to, I always want it to be kind of underneath everything else. Anything that steps over it or goes over it should be on top. So this is going to go to the bottom layer. And I do that in looks. And let's see, set, if I scroll down a little ways, go to back layer. So now it'll be in the top, or it'll be underneath everything. Okay. And so now that that's there, I can set up the logic for when the flag reaches it. We don't have that set yet. So I need to go back to the blue flag. And let's start another string of code here. So I'm going to move this off to the side and then do events when green flag clicks. Let's create a variable here. So variables, make a variable, and this will be keeping track of red's points. So red points for all sprites. Okay. And then I do want to keep this one here, but I don't want it there, so I'm going to just click on it and drag it over a little bit. It's right there, it's fine. And I want to initially set red points to zero every time the game starts again. So when green flag clicked, set red points to 0. And then I want to forever if if this blue flag is what we're clicked on right now, okay. If blue flag is touching, so in sensing, touching, and I haven't named the sprite yet, so let me go do that. Let's click back on this sprite and let's call this red's home. Right, back to the blue flag's code. Blue flag's code, touching red's home. If touching is red's home, then we want to, in variables, change red points by 1. And we want to set, so I'm going to set red has flag to false, because that will automatically, because here we said if red has flag is ever false, you know, go back to normal size, go back to your corner, wait a second, and set the ghost effect back to 0. So we're saying here, if you're touching red's home, increase red's points, but then red no longer has the flag. Go back to your and run this line of code over here. Let's see. So we don't need to that. And just planning ahead, let's go ahead and add another if, control if, and this is going to go below the first if, not inside of it. If in variables, I want to grab red points, and what I want to do is I want to know if they're greater than a certain amount. So that's in operators. Greater than, I'm going to go ahead and stick it in this if, and then the red points inside of it. If red points are greater than 2, then I'm going to events, broadcast a message. And I'm going to click on this arrow and do a new message, and I'm going to do red wins. So I'm going to set up later the message screen when red wins. We'll display that and we'll stop all the other scripts from running. So let's click the green flag and let's see if this is working. Let's take the red knight and run and grab the blue flag and bring it back to here. And what we should see is the points go up and the flag goes back. The flag's going. The flag's staying, and we're like sitting here and increasing our points indefinitely. All right. Red has flag. False. So change red points by 1. Set red has flag to false. And over here, I'm saying forever if red has flag equals false. Okay, so if touching red knight and red has flag equals true, is kind of overriding what's happening here. So what we need to do here then is kind of just separate the flag from the player, the red knight, for a second. So if I go to motion, and if I add go to, not there, into this if, into the first if. So after set red has flag to false, let's go to, and let's just go ahead and send it to where it's supposed to be, which is 184, negative 151. Set the green flag and try that. Because then we're moving the flag away from the red knight. And red has flag will be false, so it'll know to resize. There we go. That's what I want to see. So now we have 1 point. The flag went back to its spot. And I can keep doing that. Okay. So far, so good there. Alright, now we have knight. He can shoot his crossbow. He can go collect a flag. He can bring it back here and get points. Let's add some sound effects. What we want to ultimately do is get this knight completely set up and get the flag completely set up and the bolt completely set up, and then we can just duplicate these sprites and change some of the variables. So the red knight is missing a little bit of stuff. We want him to make a noise. So let's say when he yeah, but all that's going to have to go with we're going to have to wait until we make the blue knight to know when he's being hit by a crossbow or when he's hitting the crossbow. We can we'll just do all. Let's go ahead and duplicate this stuff. Alright, so I'm going to right click on the red knight. I'm going to duplicate him. And it makes red knight 2. I'm going to change the name of the sprite here to blue knight. Alright, and in his code, we're going to make some little changes. When we start the game, I want him to go to here, roughly. Let's point in the other direction. I'm going to click on point in direction and flip this arrow to face that way and hit the green flag. And now let's move him where we want him. About here. This is 185. It says -4, but let's make it 0. So just negative or positive 185 in the X direction. Let's hit the green flag and see what that looks like. Okay. We need to change all the keys here. So, and the costume. Let's change the costume. And click on costume, and I'm going to change the color of his body, of this thing on his hat, and his shield. So let's do, I'm going to click on fill. I'm going to click on here, and I don't want to do gradients. I want a solid color for all this, and we'll do a very bluish color. And I'm going to just click through all of the costumes and change those all together. So now he's blue. Let's go back to the first costume. Let's pick a different color for the helmet. We'll do like a greenish color. We'll go through here. Okay. And then the shield is important to change. We'll do a very light blue on that. Okay, and now I can click on the shield all the way across. Alright, and now the Blue Knight is set up. For his costume and his code, I just need to look through here and do, okay, instead of A and D, we're going to do key left arrow and key right arrow. And instead of W and S, we're going to do up arrow and down arrow. And now when I hit the green flag, I should be able to control him. Okay. And now when we shoot, oh, that goes on to the thing. So that's it for him. Alright. So let's go to the Red Knight's arrow. And let's add a little bit to it. Alright, so in this one we're removing. After we move 20 steps, I want to check and see if the arrow is hitting the Blue Knight. And not him as in general, specifically the blue part of him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an if, so control if, stick it under the move 20 steps. This is inside of the repeat block. I'm going to grab sensing, and there's a color touching color. I want to drag that in here. And what I want to do is, when I click on the color, I can choose it manually, or I can use this eyedropper down here, the very last thing right here. Okay. And then it'll let me choose the color I want. Now I want to choose the color of the arrow, but the arrow's not here. So let me click outside of this. And while I'm clicked on the arrow, if I click on this picture of an eye, I can kind of turn it on and off. So now that it's on, now I want to click on the eyedropper that's right here. And select this color. I want to make sure that I get it kind of in the middle. I don't want any color but that one. Alright, so if that color of the arrow is touching the shield, I'm going to click the eyedropper again, and I'm going to grab the picture of the shield, or the color of the shield, sorry. So I'm going to click on the shield. Okay. Then I want you to wait. We'll do like 0.2 seconds. Okay. 0.2 seconds, and then delete the clone. Well, the clone's going to delete anyways. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to try to shoot the arrow, oh, we never did set up the... We did. Something went way wrong. Alright. Direction. direction. Okay. How did this go from working well to not working at all? So when I press Q, we create a clone, but it is going the way wrong direction. All right, I'm just troubleshooting right now, so you don't have to follow along with that. I'm going to show. It's not picking up on Red Knight's direction anymore. Go to Red Knight, point in direction, Red Knight direction. Direction to direction. Oh, okay. When we created the Blue Knight, we still have this set Red Knight direction here, and that's overriding what this is doing. So on the Blue Knight, let's create a variable. So variable, make a variable, and we need to do Blue Knight direction. And then change this to set Blue Knight direction to direction, and that should automatically pick up on his. And now, yeah, ours should be working good. All right. So now if I go back to the Red Knight arrow, I can hide it again. Okay, let's click on the green flag, and there you go. All right, and we're seeing that when it hits the shield, okay, it's waiting for the 0.2 seconds. Then we need to delete it. So we're going to do in control and delete this clone after the wait. So if the color of the arrow is touching the color of his shield, then we wait 0.2 seconds and then delete. Okay. And depending on where you're at, it will go a little bit through the shield, which is why we want the shield to be out away from the body a little bit. And that's because it's moving 20 steps at a time. So sometimes it doesn't realize that it's touched it until it's gone a little bit past it. But that's working fine. So let's and then this clone is if we're not hitting the shield, after it runs through all of its steps, it'll delete the clone anyways. That way the clones aren't just hanging out along the edge of the screen. Let's go back into variables and turn off this Blue Knight direction. Okay, so now we can shoot, and the arrow will detect if it's hitting the shield and stop. Okay. Which makes the arrow pretty much complete. There's no other programming logic that goes into it. Except for sounds. We can add sounds really fast. Let's go into sounds, and we do the search. There was a sound called whoosh that I used. I think I used high whoosh. Okay. And then in code, whenever we start as a clone, we want to play that sound. So sound, start sound high whoosh. And then we also want to make a sound if it hits the shield. So let's go back into sound. And there was a clang. We'll add that, and then we'll start sound clang whenever we hit this. So this color. So let's hit that, and now. All right. And now that that's done, we can duplicate Red Knight's arrow. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to rename it to Blue Knight's arrow. Let's change the color of it, just this part of it, to a, I'm going to use the select tool, I'm going to click on this and then do the outline, and we want it to be different than the shield, but still kind of a bluish color. We'll go really light blue, something like that. Alright, and now if I click on show for this, and then its code, we just need to change, instead of go to red night, we want to go to blue night. Instead of pointing in red flag direction, I can take this and get rid of it and go to variables. We already made the variable blue night direction. Instead of Q, we'll do, you can do space, or I use the letter M because it's right there. And then we want to do color, and I clicked on the eye so that I could see the arrow. If this color is touching the color of his shield, the red knight shield, then we play that sound. So let's try that. I can press M. Okay, and they can shoot at the same time. Alright, so far so good on the darts. Alright, I also need to duplicate the flag. Let's make sure that its logic is complete really fast. I think it is. Alright. So let's duplicate the blue flag. We're going to call it red flag. We're going to change its costume. We're just going to use the paint bucket and pick a red color. It needs to go here. This is negative 191, 152. So I need to change all of these. Negative 191, 152. And then this negative 191. Positive 152. And we are doing this in 3 spots. Negative 191. Positive 152. Alright, and so all these color things need to change. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So instead of red points, it needs to be blue points. We don't actually have that variable yet, so we need to make a variable called blue points for all sprites. And we'll go ahead and drag this next to here. So we'll set blue points to 0. If touching, we don't have a blue home yet, so let's take care of that. Let's duplicate red's home. Okay, it needs to go to this corner, so if I click on it, I can move it to this corner. Like that. So that is 195, negative 146, 195, negative 146. Otherwise, it's the same. We need to change its name to Blue's Home. Okay, now back onto the red flag's logic. If touching Blue's Home, change blue points by 1, set, we don't have a blue has flag yet, variable yet, so we need to go ahead and make that. So make a variable called blue has flag. Okay. I don't want that to be shown on the screen, so I'm going to uncheck that. And then we're going to set blue has flag to false. If instead of red points are greater than 2, we're going to do blue points. And then we'll broadcast a new message, blue wins. All right, so that takes care of that string. Now on this string, we need to set blue has flag to false. If instead of red has flag, we need to drag in blue has flag. If touching red knight, change to blue knight. Set red has flag, we get rid of that, and switch it with blue has flag. And then go to blue knight. All right, I don't really like where the flag is. Let's move it over a little bit. So what we changed was the X to 192. So on all of these, I'm going to just really quickly change the X to 192 because I like that spot better. 192, 192. All right, so now when I click the green flag, let's make sure that the blue can go grab the red flag. And I can't. Oh, okay. Of course I can't. I didn't change that in the blue knight. Blue knight, if touching blue has flag, set blue has flag to true. All right, this is green flag. Now let's go try. Why is it not working? If touching, oh, no, sorry, this needs to be red flag. If touching red flag, set blue has flag to true. All right. And then if I bring it back here, we should get a point for it. All right. So that's working. All right, let's go back to our red knight. There's a couple little things that I want to do with the red knight. Now that we have a blue knight out here, we can do things like check and see if I'm being shot, or if I'm touching the flag, I want to slow myself down as well. So let's take this one. We have a string that's doing the forward and backwards direction, a string that's doing left and right and keeping track of direction, and we have this string that is checking to see if we're touching the blue flag. Let's add to this one. So I want another if. Control if, and stick it underneath, not inside of. All right, and what I want to know is if my color is touching the color of his arrow. So I need to see his arrow. So I'm going to click on blue flag or blue knight's arrow and click on the eyeball so that it shows up on the screen. Now I'm going to go back to the red knight and I'm going to say sensing if color is touching color, and then I'm going to click on the first one and click on the eyedropper and click on the red knight's body. So this is the red knight that we're coding, and then we're saying if my body, the color of my body, is touching the color of his arrow. So I'm going to click on this color and do the eyedropper and click on the arrow. Then that means I've been hit. Let's play a sound. Search. There was a bell that I used. All right, sorry, it froze for a second, but you didn't miss anything important. So I'm clicking on bell toll, but you can use whatever you want. Go back into code, we'll do sounds, start sound bell toll. And I want to freeze him in place. And if I'm going to do that, I don't want to just like move him to a different spot of the screen. I want him to hold there. So let's create a variable. So we'll do variable and make a variable. I'll do red froze. All right, so after I sound the bell, I want to set red froze to true. And I want to place him down here in this corner, so I'm going to go ahead and move him down there. And then go motion, go to XY. I want to point him towards the middle of the screen, so let's grab point in direction. Point in direction, and then click on this 90, and just 45 degrees should be perfect. Let's set the ghost effect. That's in looks. Let's see, it says down here set color effect, but we can change that to ghost. And we'll do that to like 50, so it'll be halfway see-through. We want to drop the flag at this point. So in variables, I want to set red has flag to false, because no longer gets to keep it. And now I'll free up the flag to move back over here. Set red has flag to false. And then we want to kind of keep them there, so we're going to use a wait block. And I'm going to do it for 3 seconds, but you might decide that that's too long or too short. After 3 seconds, we can play another sound to indicate that he's ready to come back into action. So let's do search. This is what I used before. It's called collect. But any sound that you think is good for that, go ahead and do. Sound, start sound collect. Okay, so after 3 seconds we play that. We set variable froze. So set red froze to false. Because he is now free to move again. And we'll change the ghost. Change color, but we switch this to ghost back to 0. He's not ghosted at all. All right. And so now that we have this variable going on here where we're turning froze on, and then 3 seconds later we're turning it off, what we're going to do is we're going to just in case, before I leave this section, at the top of the string, let's go ahead and set, before the forever, let's set red froze to false. Just in case the game ends at a time that he is froze, when the game restarts, we want him to be unfroze. So that's just kind of a safety net. But what we really want to do is come back into his forward and backwards movement string. Okay, so let's find that, the one where we're doing W and S, and then walk 10 or -8 respectively. What I want to do is I want to make sure that he can this only works if he's not froze. So instead of just checking if key W is pressed, I want to check key W pressed and froze is false. So we're going to come to the operators and grab the And we're going to stick the key W pressed inside the and then the and back inside of the if. So if key W is pressed and I need froze equals false. So while I'm still here in operators, let's grab the equals and put in here. Change the 50 to false, and then in variables, grab my red froze. Okay, so if I press the W key and red froze is true, this isn't going to work. He's not going to walk. Okay. While we're in here, let's also make it so that we're walking at 2 different speeds if the flag is captured or not. So the way we can do that is inside of, I'm going to get rid of walk 10, or just drag it out for a second. Inside of this if block, I'm going to put another if, but it's going to be an if else. So underneath if and control, there's an if else. Okay. And what I'm going to say is if I need an operator and the equal sign one, and then variables, if red has flag is false, then I'll stick this walk back in here. Okay, so this is going to be his normal speed, but once red, the else means, hey, if the opposite is true. So if red has flag is true, then it will run, instead of walk 10, it'll run whatever's here, which is going to be another walk block. So I'm going to grab walk, and you can click on my blocks to do that. And instead of 10, we'll do 8. So it's just a little bit slower. And then I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to right click on the if, the word if right here, duplicate. And then I'm going to stick that here underneath the S. So now I can get rid of this one. But we're doing negative numbers here. And backwards is a little bit slower, so let's do -8 and -6. So now there's 4 different speeds going on here. If we are moving forwards and we don't have the flag, we move 10. If we're moving forwards and do have the flag, we move 8. If we're moving backwards and we don't have the flag, we move -8. If we're moving backwards and we do have the flag, we move -6. So let's go check that out with the red knight. And everything we just did was on the red knight, so this won't work with the blue knight yet. So once I hit the blue flag, it will slow me down some. And then once we get here, I'm back up to full speed. Okay, so that seems to be working. I don't want to see this. So in variables, this is red froze. I can turn that off. Really, I didn't have to do for all sprites for that variable. But that's a small matter at this point. Alright, so the red knight is pretty well set up. Now we have to make all those changes to the blue knight. So what we can do is we can grab this one, because before this one was only this if touching blue flag. What I do is I'm just going to hold on, I'm just going to hold on to this. We're going to drag it over here into the bright section, and then I'm going to touch it to the blue knight, and you'll see the blue knight just kind of wiggles a little bit when you get it in the right spot. And then if I let go, if I come over here and click on the blue knight, that was added to it. Which means I now have 2 of these sections going that start off the same. So this one I'm just going to delete. And then this one I can just change everything from red to blue. I don't have the variable yet for this, so let's make a variable. Blue froze. And I can do for the sprite only. And then I don't even think it does still show up there. I don't want to see blue froze. Alright. So set blue froze to false. if touching red flag, then set blue has flag to true. All right, and so now this is where we're seeing if we're hit with the crossbow. So I need to see red knight's crossbow or arrow. And then back on the blue flag, I need to change these colors. So if my color of blue knight, is touching the color of the red's arrow, then play the same sound, set blue froze to true, set blue has flag to false, set blue froze to false. I think we changed all the colors. So let's check that out. Now I should be able to go grab this flag, and then if I get shot by the red, it sticks me in the corner. Now I don't want to be in this corner, because this is red's corner. This is where he's going to go when he gets shot. So I wanted to go to the opposite corner. Let's go ahead and drag him up here. So that's 204, 138, 204, and 138. And then his point and direction, he's going to be facing this way, so that's about 135. So let's try that again. Let's just get him shot. Okay. All right, and that is the most of the mechanics of the game. At this point, it's just about adding music and then the screens if the game is over or at the start of the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one more sprite. I'm going to paint a new sprite. I'm going to pick the color black. I'm going to draw a rectangle. That's as big as the screen. And then I can drag this around until it fits over the screen better. Let's add some text to this. And then I need to change the color of the text so that we can see it. Let's bring the brightness all the way up and the saturation all the way down. That'll make white. And then here's where we type our directions. So our directions are going to be something to the effect of blue. Not working. Blue knights use arrow keys to move, and I'm going to go ahead and move this to this corner roughly. And I want to make sure I'm looking at the game preview here, and the text is not interfering with the variables there, so that's too high. Up there is fine. All right, and M, and now I'm going to press Enter so that I move down to the next line, rather go off the screen. M to attack. Okay, I'm going to press Enter twice so I leave some space. Red knights use WASD keys to move and Q to, let's go ahead and press Enter to attack. Alright, press space again, and then kind of the general gist of the game is grab your opponent's flag and bring it to your corner. Oops, gotta press Enter. To your corner 3 times to win. Okay, and then I'm going to click the text thing again and click down here and start a new text box. Right click to begin. And the reason I wanted to start a new text box is now I can resize this one separately from the rest of that and make the text much bigger. Okay. I can also change its color separately and change its font style. We'll do the pixel. Okay. And I want to call this costume something like start game. Okay. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to click on this, use the selection to click on this box and delete it. And take this one and drag it up, and double click on it, and I'm going to type Red Winds. Use the selection to center it better. Now we're going to duplicate this and double click inside of this and write Blue Winds. And we'll change the color of the text to blue. Alright, so now let's go into code. And what we want to do is when green flag is clicked, we want to switch to that first costume, switch to costume start game. Oh, sorry, I didn't. Let's go back and rename these costumes. So start game, Red Winds, and Blue Winds. Alright. So we renamed the costumes so that they're easier to follow along with the logic. Red Winds, Blue Winds. Back in code, switch to costume, start game. And I want to show it. And I want it to go to the front layer. I want to make sure that there's nothing over top of it. And then I want to control, I want to wait until. There's a block in here called wait until. And then in sensing, I'm going to do mouse down. Okay. So at this point, this string will stop and just wait. Has the user clicked yet? Has the user clicked yet? And once it does, then we keep going. We'll broadcast a new message. That's an event, broadcast, and then we'll click on new message and we'll do begin. Once the game begins, we want to hide, so back in looks, we'll do hide. And then if you want to play a background song during the game, here's where you can do that simply. We'll do control forever, and then in sounds, do loops, and find a song that you like. I'm just going to use this one again. Play sound until done for this type of thing. So I'll play the background music. And then we want to also take care of when we receive messages for the red or blue winning. So in events, when I receive Blue Winds, I want to switch the costume to Blue Winds. I want to show. I want to go to the front layer, just in case I'm not. And then I want to stop everybody. Control, stop all. And I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to duplicate, right click and duplicate. I want to do the same thing with Red Winds, but we'll switch to costume Red Winds. And that should take care of that. So that's all the logic we need for our messaging system. Now here we set up this broadcast begin, and the idea here is nobody's going to be allowed to move until this broadcast happens. So at the start of the game, we're going to switch to this costume here, okay, and we're going to wait for the user to click before anyone's allowed to move. But we and our knights are kind of set to like move us to be able to move as soon as the green flag is clicked, and we need to change that. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And basically these three, when green flag clicks, I want to get rid of them. So I'm going to click on the line right below them and just separate these all out and then get rid of when green flag clicked. And I want to replace them with in events when I receive, and then it's already set to begin, but that's what we want. When I receive begin. So now we can't move until we receive that message. Same thing with the blue knight. I'm going to zoom out so I can see these strings better. And then when I receive begin, when I receive begin, when I receive begin. All right, now let's do a quick bug check. I'm going to put it into full screen. All right, I clicked on the green flag, but nothing's happening. There's no music. If I'm pressing the keys that would usually be shooting. Actually, those are working. Theoretically, we should fix that too. Let's see. If we go into the arrows, we do the same thing. We get rid of when green flag clicked and click it and replace it with when I receive begin for both of the arrows. So we already found our first bug and fixed it. All right. Now let's try this again. Click the green flag. Okay. If I press M or Q, I'm not hearing the arrows going. If I'm pressing the move buttons for either knight, once I do click begin, I should see them in the right spot. So I'm going to click, doesn't matter where. Okay. And they are in the right spot. Now I should be able to move. If I go grab the red flag, I can bring it back to my base and get a point. If I grab the red flag, but the red knight shoots me, I drop the red flag. He can grab the red flag, and if I shoot him, he drops the flag. Alright, their ghost effect isn't coming back, isn't reversing, so we'll fix that, but let's see if he can get points. And then, alright, so let's stop that. Alright, so let's see what's going on with the ghosting effect here. Okay, because here I did change ghost effect by 0, and I meant to do set ghost effect to 0, so in looks, set instead of change. Set ghost effect to 0, and I have to fix that in the blue knight as well. Set ghost effect 0. Alright, so that was another bug that we fixed. And to test if the point system is working, let's really quickly go to the red knight. The red knight, and where are we keeping track of points? No, that's on the flag. If we go to the red flag, we said if blue's points are greater than 2. Let's do if blue's points are greater than 0. So right now they're going to start off at 0. Okay, and let's take control of the blue knight. Let's grab the flag and bring it back home. And if everything's working correctly, we should see the message blue wins and everything should stop. Alright, so now that I know that's working, I can change this back. And that should be it. I didn't really test this with anybody, So there might be little things that you want to change. You want to make them walk a little bit faster or slower. They might need to stay in their timeout froze state for longer or less time. The thing to do now is to find someone to just test this out with and then have that conversation. What would make this game better? And see if you can tweak it to, make it a little bit more fun or a little bit more challenging or a little bit easier if you want the game to end quicker. It's completely up to you from this point to fine-tune it, but this is good enough that you should actually enjoy playing it with somebody. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.